what are common addictions that you see for entrepreneurs?
I think that people who have a high tolerance for risk are a little bit more susceptible to addictive behaviors and maybe are not so good at being honest with ourselves at times of what is the real danger that we're putting ourselves or other people in because of our behavior.
I see it with money.
That's probably one of those things that can be easily rationalized. Each of us probably needs to come to our own conclusions as far as just like what is enough.
There's such a tendency to, nobody's coming to save me. I need to be a solo hero. I'll do it if no one else will.
As most entrepreneurs probably know, are capable of being very lean and doing it all if we need to, but that can't last forever.
Welcome to Breaking the Barrier podcast, where we break the barrier between our faith and our work. I'm here with Scott Weeman today, Executive Director of Catholic in Recovery. We have a great conversation about leadership and vulnerability and the 12 steps and the sacraments and what he's built over the last 10 years. Thanks for joining us. Scott, I super appreciate being here, man. It's great. You've built Catholic in Recovery from its infancy to being a national nonprofit. You've served over 5,000 people, breaking them free from sin and addiction through this combination of 12 steps and the sacraments. So I'd love to unpack that in a second here. But I've known you as a friend for a number of years. And you've been with one of the earliest Sent fellowships, so you know intimately what we do at Sent. And I know your personal story, obviously. Before we dive in, though, I'd like to just start with a confession.
Yeah, let's hear it.
I didn't prep you for this at all, so
Okay.
here it is. When we first met, I only read your book because I wanted you to like me. You were leading at St. Bridget, and I was like, man, this guy's really connected. Casey and I just moved. He just wrote this book, and the best thing you can do to show someone that you like them is to read their book. So like arrogantly, I thought that, I don't need that. Like the 12 steps and the sacraments like didn't apply to my life. And after reading it was like totally flipped on its head. So for folks who, and I'd love to just like start with unpacking for entrepreneurs what the 12 steps might have to offer. Yeah. Because there's a lot there. But for maybe those that aren't familiar with AA and the 12 steps and like what are they? Yeah,
I'll tell you a bit of my story. But I've never asked the follow-up question to someone who I've given my book to, if they've read it. I just assume that most people don't. And, yeah. So I appreciate that confession. That's good. Yeah. 12 steps of AA, and which have been broadly applied to help people with all sorts of different addictions, compulsions, and unhealthy attachments. But Alcoholics Anonymous was founded in 1935, and really kind of, the 12 steps formed out of old 6 principles that the Oxford group had, but really a blueprint, a spiritual blueprint for conversion, I would say. And, only in the first step does the word alcohol is appear, or the steps have been adapted to speak to alcoholism, drug addiction, food addictions, sexual addiction, various gambling, codependency, cluttering, you name it, behaviors and substances that might pull us away from God. And so save my life. I mean, when we talk about the 12 steps, we're kind of talking about like principles that guide our lives. Yes. And so there's the working of the steps, and each step has some different kind of like work to it, or conversion, or surrender, or some spiritual action. I think though it's a great blend of grace and action, and therefore saved my life, brought me back to the church of my youth. Grew up nominally Catholic, but upon really hitting bottom, I've yet to meet someone who enters recovery on a winning streak, but like totally ashamed, fearful, hopeless. Found the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous. It's totally saved my life. The men and women there who came from a variety of backgrounds and continue to come from a variety of backgrounds really just let me recognize that I'm not alone, and that there is hope for me. And they help encourage me, borrow our hope until you have your own. Let us love you until you can love yourself. But it was very apparent early on as well that this is going to be a spiritual program. Alcoholics Anonymous and other 12-step groups have been secularized quite a bit as our culture has become more secular, as have members of those groups. And so there might be a little less prioritizing faith and Christian or Catholic principles that would otherwise be embedded in the early foundation of 12-step recovery. Today,
that's not how it was started.
It was still started with the framing of the 12 steps is the same today as it was earlier. We heard, God, first step is we admitted we were powerless over fill in the blank, alcohol, drugs, lust, food, gambling, that our lives had become unmanageable. Step 2 came to believe that a power greater than ourselves can restore us to sanity. Step 3 made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood him. And so some of that language, God as we understand him, higher power, is really to define. It's not to say you can make God whoever you want him to, but it's really is encouraging is that the God that you know, or God as you understand him, is a good enough starting point. And so, people come with all sorts of religious experiences and backgrounds, atheist, agnostic, Christian, non-Christian. It's really to say that doesn't matter, but, recognizing that there is a power greater than ourselves. And also throughout the 12 steps, recognizing that I'm not him is a really important part of it as well. It's said that the first 3 steps can be simplified as I can't, God can, I ought to let him. As we get it further into the steps, in step 4, we make a searching, fearless, and moral inventory of ourselves, which is where we really do a lot of internal work around the resentments that we're holding, the way fear dictates our life, sexual and financial misconduct. In step 5, probably the most akin to confession, we admitted to God, ourselves, and another human being the exact nature of our wrongs. Step 6 and 7 ask him to remove whatever defects of character stand in the way of serving him and others. If, by the way, this sounds like a pathway to like good business practices, yes. It is a lot of just kind of like personal inventory,
yes,
which is hard to do on an individual level. It's hard even as a business owner sometimes to take a very honest inventory of ourselves or our business. And, then in step 8 and 9, we make a list of all persons we had harmed, become willing to make amends to them all. And step 9, we make such direct amends, except when to do so would injure them, another person or others. Steps 10, 11, 12, really into how do we maintain that conversion? What do we do to, instigate or initiate a daily conversion? Surrendering on a daily basis. When we're wrong, promptly admitting it. Staying connected to God, conscious contact with God through prayer and meditation. And then in step 12, essentially giving back what we've been freely given, which is our call as disciples. And so the sacraments can be woven in throughout that. My book, The 12 Steps in the Sacraments, does that, outlines sacraments of the church in union with the 12 steps of recovery. But again, the word alcohol or whatever the addiction, behavior, substance might be, is only noted in that first step. The rest of it is like, and that really is true, speaks to how the alcohol, the drugs, the lust is just a symptom of this deeper spirituality, of this deeper spiritual malady. And the 12 steps is a great blueprint for any of us to overcome those compulsive behaviors, those things that we might be powerless over.
Thanks for joining us. I know you hear this all the time from all different podcasters, but if you could like and follow us, it's a big deal. It helps us make more content like this. More people see it. We beat the algorithm. We can reach more Catholic entrepreneurs, help you break the barrier, bring your faith into business, and build something beautiful for the Lord. So please like and subscribe. It'll go a long way. Super appreciate it. I'd like to take a moment to share about our upcoming Sent Summit. It's going to be in Denver from September 8th to the 11th. And we're going to be gathering 600 top Catholic entrepreneurs, investors, and philanthropists to come together for conversation, for speaking, for community. We have great speakers lined up. We've got Arthur Brooks kicking off as one of the keynotes. We'd love to see you there. If you're interested, check out our website to learn more details. There's so much meat just packed into that.
Yeah.
So you get to see people from all walks of life, and you've been an entrepreneur for a while. You've been sent around entrepreneurs. 2 questions. Yeah. Do you believe in the phrase, all sin is addiction?
I think that there is. I don't know if I would take it that far. I think there is value in distinguishing between like vice and addiction. In that there might be some habitual sin, may or may not be an addiction as well. But I think that we have this, the part of the human condition is to escape reality, escape the truth. We don't want to accept what is the truth, what is reality, doing God's will. So there might be I think that within each of us, there are some patterns of compulsive or addictive behaviors that are embedded within our sin. Although I wouldn't say that every sin is an addiction per se.
Yeah.
But I think that if we're honest with ourselves, there are repeated sins, habitual sins that we probably have less power over than we believe we do. We often rationalize, like it's not that bad. I mean, those of us who are addicts or alcoholics get really good at rationalizing our own bad behavior. And I'm pretty certain that all of us that can do that to some degree.
Oh yeah,
to a great degree.
And that's where I wanted to go with it, because like, I don't know, as you've had time and space to give your own moral inventory, you've seen a lot of people walk in this.
Mm-hmm.
You've become good at picking up on addiction when you see addictive patterns. So maybe just shifting the lens to entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
What are common addictions that you see for entrepreneurs? For us, like I know we've walked, yeah, right. We've walked together for a while. Like you could use me as an example. You could anything, you yourself, whatever. But what are common addictive patterns that you see with entrepreneurs?
That's a good. I've never thought of it in that way. I do believe that I think that people who are, like have a high tolerance for risk, are a little bit more susceptible to addictive behaviors, and maybe are not so good at being honest with ourselves at times of what is the real danger that we're putting ourselves or other people in because of our behavior. And there can be, varying degrees of that. But I would say, one would say workaholism, which maybe to some degree, I think, but I think, it's, again, you get to the root of it. Pride is at the root of it. And you've got to have some degree of pride, of unhealthy pride in some ways, in order to do great things, in order to believe that, I don't think that believing that you can do great things or believing that you can do something that no one else has done is a sinful form of pride. I think that there is a lot of actually hope in God and virtue in that. But sometimes that can be taken to an extreme. And so, I would say that it's not necessarily a behavior or a substance per se, but just that we can be prideful. I mean, we've got to be very careful especially when we get, elevated into positions of power or authority within our own business or with our peers, that we've got to be very careful about pride. Yeah.
One of the things I've realized in my own reflection and, knowing you through the years, it's really easy for me to get addicted to information and get on a train where, we're wanting to know all of the things.
Yeah.
And it seems like that, at least as I've seen it, where and when you make space for gathering information versus acting on that information, leading a business, you might think you need to know everything, and there's just way too much to know. And I'm curious, would you consider that an addiction? Would you say that that's like, hey, like wanting to basically be God and have that sort of knowledge of everything going on around the world and in my industry and my business? Like, yeah, how would you classify that?
I would say there is, I think that like desire, an over extended desire for information or for knowledge can be an addiction, a form of addiction. It's something that we believe gives us power and control if we know it. And, and a lot of people, so for a lot of people who are smart, addiction recovery does not come easy, because a recovery requires a surrender and an admission that we are powerless over fill in the blank, whatever it is that we're struggling with. And that sometimes comes a little bit more challenging for someone who is objectively smart. And so the idea of, recognize that I don't know it all. I've got to refer to other people, God, to get help. It can make it challenging.
When as you've gone through the 12 steps and with this sacramental lens, what are the biggest hurdle? Like, are there consistent steps where it's like, man, that's really tough for people? And I'm thinking about that entrepreneurial lens a little bit. Like, would you say that, hey, for yourself, there's been a step or two that have been really challenging?
There's some, the first step, by the way, I don't want to forget this. I'm curious about what you think are entrepreneurs' common addictive traits or qualities.
Yeah.
So we'll put I just wanted to throw that out there before I forget. I would say that the first step is, really, it's said that the first step is the only one that we need to work perfectly or work 100% completion. And that means that within every cell of our body should know that I am powerless over alcohol. And when I take a sip of alcohol, it triggers a allergic reaction that is not standard amongst most people who drink alcohol, but that allergy prompts an obsession of my mind that it's hard to get over until I get more. And, by the grace of God, when I got sober, it took about 2.5 months for that mental obsession to be lifted. And that was really the first miracle that's taken place. I'm sure there were little mini miracles, but when, after, it didn't happen in some white flashing light, but just recognizing like, wow, I haven't thought about drinking or taking or using a drug in the last couple of days. That's a miracle. That's the first time that's happened in a decade. And, but that first step, though, getting honest with ourselves, is challenging. All of the steps that require great honesty, I would say primarily steps 1, we admitted we were powerless over alcohol, fill in the blank, that our lives had become unmanageable. And there's kind of 2 factors of that. We are powerless over alcohol, drugs, lust, whatever you are struggling with, that our lives have become unmanageable. A lot of people feel like they can still manage their lives, maybe because the consequences haven't been so obvious. But if we're really honest with ourselves in the way that it's impacting ourselves and other people, consequences are naturally, they're part of that. If it's a problem because there are consequences. Yes. We can rationalize the consequences. Step 4, which I mentioned before. I
just want to interrupt right there. As I hear that, my mind's immediately trying to rationalize control, define unmanageable, and I'm already doing it, as I'm running, and I know it's coming, but as I think about the addictions that entrepreneurs have, I'm thinking, well, I'm getting along well enough. I've found balance in this area. That's a sign, if I'm hearing it right, that I haven't actually surrendered it to God.
Mm-hmm.
Is that how it? Yeah.
Yeah. The phrase functional alcoholic, we've probably heard, or, is essentially saying, which is a term that I don't really like. I understand the meaning behind it, but you can still have a good job, still be married, still have a car in the garage, not be, still have a good relationship with your kids, and be dying inside because of a habitual behavior or substance that you're engaging in. And, the shame and the anxiety and the way that we feel about ourselves, the way that we perceive God and other people and our relationship with each can be deteriorated. So, but it's got to be, that's an internal job. The beautiful thing about 12-step recovery is that no one's there to try to convince you that you are an addict or an alcoholic. That's something that you got to come to terms with on your own. And in fact, I think the acknowledgement and the respect for free will in 12-step recovery and the essence of 12-step recovery is beautiful. If I went to my AA home group or, was talking to some people and telling them, hey, you know what? I don't think I'm an alcoholic. They would actually not, they might say, where did you come to that conclusion? And ask some just questions that would really, inquire me to be honest with myself, encourage me to be honest with myself. But also they would someone might say, well, why don't you go try some controlled drinking for a month, however long. And if you find out that you actually are an alcoholic, come on back. There will still be a seat open for you. But someone's not going to try to engage that. And so it's really, we've got to come to that conclusion ourselves. And so it's not a program that's for people who need it, but it's a program rather for people who want it.
Yes.
So that's the hardest thing, though, when someone calls and says, hey, my loved one is struggling, my son is finding a challenge, or my husband or my wife or my brother or whoever it might be, is that, the loved one who's reaching out to me for help actually probably wants their loved one's recovery more than their loved one wants their recovery. And part of that probably is because they're experiencing the natural consequences of someone else's behavior. They're, the financial repercussions or whatever it might be. And so they're more incentivized for their loved one to get sober than the loved one who's struggling with the addiction is.
Yes.
And I'm not all that useful to that loved one that's struggling with an addiction if they don't recognize that it's a problem. And in fact, my engagement or my intervention, especially if they don't know who I am, would actually spoil future opportunities that there might be there if that person does decide I'm ready to change. And so allowing the natural consequences of our behaviors to be realized is one of the greatest things that we can do.
And it's I appreciate you unpacking that, because as I think about what's culturally acceptable, that also plays a big role in it. If it's like, oh, I remember, in college, I had to fill out a form once, and it was, how many standard drinks do you have on a weekly basis?
Yeah.
And I had to lie on that form because I saw the options, and I'm like, none of these options are good. Like, I don't want to respond until I put, about 3 to 5 or whatever. And like, that could be a single night. Like, and it's so switching the lens to our culture. And this is maybe where like the Catholic layer comes in, because like, it's clear we're not supposed to drink to get drunk. Like, that's like all over scripture. In a similar way, it's clear that our family is our primary vocation. So if work starts to degrade from that in a serious way, degrade from that period, we've got our priorities wrong.
Yeah.
And our culture basically shows us and glorifies entrepreneurs as these grinding, up late, Elon Musk, sleep under the desk, do the thing. And for somebody who's married, which a huge percentage of people, especially in Sent and Catholics are, we take marriage seriously, that just doesn't fit.
Yeah.
It's not correct. It's sinful. It's perversion. And so it's interesting. I'm curious, like, one of your question back at me was, where do you see addiction in entrepreneurs? I see it with money. And I would love to just dive into this a little bit, but the reason why I see it with money is because it's, I love what Jacob Imam at the New Polities, money's a placeholder. Always know what it's holding a place for. For an entrepreneur, it's also a signal that you're providing value. So you're getting money. It's saying it's like a major KPI. Hey, I'm doing a good job. People are paying for this. It's working. And you kind of need that. It's one of the most true values is, I'm going to use this thing, money, that I've sacrificed time to give to you, to show that you're worth my time and energy. And so that's what's happening. And then it becomes the thing that money, just for its own sake. Do you see that? Have you? Yeah.
Yeah, I think absolutely. And that's probably one of those things that can be easily rationalized, because you're providing a lot of good rationale for why money is necessary and valuable. And each of us probably needs to come to our own conclusions of, as far as just like, what is enough, keeps me and allows me and my family to be secure, but we can rationalize a lot of decisions that might be leading to time away from our families, or, providing not as engaged in our faith life as we ought to be because of the security that's provided by money. And even, I'm not giving as much time to the church at the moment, but I'll make up for that by giving more money to the church. And so my working hard is providing some fruitfulness and may benefit the church. I mean, it's hard to say that any of these things are black and white, all good or all bad. The things that we make judgments around usually come with a shadow side, whether that's a positive thing that has some, some misgivings about it, or a negative thing that might lead to some good things,
So just you go back to the alcohol example.
Yeah.
You go to your home group that you've been doing life with and meeting with consistently, which is also just something else we could unpack. Just the value of community as a recovery, as a transformative, redemptive essential.
Yeah.
They might say, hey, and you say, hey, I'm not an alcoholic anymore. They might say, try it and see and see what would, and and not going too literal on that example, but like the essence of what it is what you're saying is, there is a litmus test to say whether or not this is a safe area for you, or whether or not there's more needed to combat in that. So on money, what are some litmus tests that you think you or people, you personally, like that you would use to say, am I in a healthy place here?
I would say also to clarify, there are plenty of people that if I went to in my recovery group and said, hey, I don't think I'm an alcoholic anymore, actually, who would absolutely not just say, go and have, see what you find.
Yeah.
But there's something I think that's beautiful about that, though, too. So, yeah, we each probably need to have some of our own litmus tests around money. Yeah, I think mine, or just in general, it's around, I would say it's fear. Like, fear, one of the beautiful things about working through the 12 steps, particularly step 4, is you get very familiar with the way that resentments and fear lead to decision making or influence our behaviors, our actions, our attitudes, and such. And so I would say that, for me, a lot of it is how much am I spending fearing a lack of money, or and sometimes that's both personal or for my business. Is like, I'm racking my brain thinking about how things are going to get paid for or done, and granted that may be a time of desolation rather than a time of abundance. There's going to be different kind of rubrics or things that might alert us to problems both in times of abundance and in times of desolation. Yeah, I would say that if I'm hiding things from my wife, or from in a business aspect, if I'm hiding things from key shareholders or people who otherwise need to know, then that's a big red alert, like a big red flag. Yeah, and if I'm easily, like, if I'm having a hard time being generous with or gracious with my money, yes, both from a work perspective and from a personal perspective, that's probably a red flag as well.
Yes, I would totally echo that for me personally. Like, if I'm feeling fearful, and by the way, just for like, you and I both know, like, growing and scaling a business, like, there's seasons of abundance. Absolutely. And seasons like it's not like you've ever got past thinking about payroll.
Yes.
Like people are like, oh yeah, then I made it. It's like, no. The most successful people who sold their company for hundreds of millions or billions of dollars, like, there's been times halfway through their journey where they're thinking about, am I going to make this payroll? Do I need to make cut? Like, it's just and so there's the fear that might prompt, hey, I need to get a handle on my finances, which is a very real thing. And then there's just like the anxiety, like generalized anxiety. And what you're talking about is kind of the more general, like, is God with me in this way?
Yeah.
Or like, do I need to control more here?
Yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of the times too, I would say, if the conversations that I have with the people, like with my mentors, with my board, with the people who are just helping me carry my cross, if that's a more financially focused, usually it's the tone of those conversations that will tell me what are the things that I'm obsessing about.
Yes. Well, I totally hear that. And one of the things I've seen, I don't know if you've experienced this too, but moving from Red Door, the business I kind of became an entrepreneur in for 10 years, and then moving over to Scent as a nonprofit, I ask people for money, right? With, I would say spiritual reciprocation, but I'm not giving you a return on the money. Yeah. We're not talking. So in a lot of ways, it's easier to have, I would say it's easier to have an unhealthy relationship with money in a for-profit business. Because if you're asking for money at a nonprofit, you really have to wrestle with, what is this thing that I'm asking? Do I feel inferior to this person who has more money than I do that I need? Do I resent that feeling of dependence on the person? Do I look, so has that been a part of your inner world asking for? Yeah.
There's a humility that comes with asking for money, and that, I think regardless of whether you're asking for $50 or $50,000 from someone, that there is a necessary humility. And also it's, beautifully showcases how we need each other and how we benefit each other, and how, we can support each other, and our gifts, our unique gifts can enhance and strengthen the kingdom of God. And even, Catholic in Recovery has been around for a little over 10 years. I have, we, as most entrepreneurs probably know, are capable of like being very lean and doing it all if we need to, but that can't last forever. And so, but in the back of my mind, there's kind of like this, as we're growing and scaling, and our annual budget's increasing, our fundraising budget's increasing, and things like that. Like, there's part of me that says, well, if we really can bootstrap this thing, it just wouldn't be as effective and good, and I would have to tolerate with a whole bunch more of anxiety. Yeah, and so there's like, just because you can do something and are capable of doing something doesn't mean that that's the most effective use of your time. And yeah, so we've got to sometimes reverse rationalize when asking someone for benefit, something that's benefiting them. That's one of the biggest, in fundraising and developing as a nonprofit leader, is recognizing that you're giving someone an opportunity to make an impact in ways that they otherwise by themselves couldn't do, especially if it's with a project that is very meaningful to them. A lot of people have been impacted by addiction, their own or a loved one's. And so to be able to, give back or provide for something, even if it's not benefiting the person who they directly love, but to create a legacy or to make an impact in the world, is giving them an opportunity. It can be hard to, the spirituality of fundraising it can be hard to keep that on the front of your mind all the time.
Yes. And I would say that even applies in the for-profit world as well.
Absolutely.
Like it's amazing how many people, as I talk about, like on the Red Door side, our mission's to deepen relationships between people through creative entertainment.
Mm-hmm.
And if I get too much into the financials and the returns, and this could be good, and that's like, I've totally missed the boat. There's been so many wonderful people who just love the fact that it's wholesome family entertainment, people coming together, and like the blessing that they could be a part of bringing that.
Yeah.
It's almost like the returns are secondary.
Yeah.
And so I just echo that for sure. I'm curious if you take a broad lens on how you've built Catholic in Recovery. There's nonprofit leaders listening to this, for-profit leaders. Do you have a couple of inflection points that you've seen where you'd look back and you'd say, man, that was a big decision, whether it was a product decision, a people decision, a strategy decision? Like, if you're going to pick a couple of those out, and then I'd love to just, as we unpack this, I'm going to also have the lens of like where has your faith been challenged in that? Because I think people, Breaking the Barrier podcast, we're like trying to break the barrier between faith and work. And just because you're a nonprofit that's got Catholic in the name, like, doesn't mean it's automatic that your faith comes into your operating system. It's hard to scale a business and leading volunteers. Like, I got so many questions. So So let's maybe just start with the inflection points. Like, where have you seen, like, man, that was a big moment for us. Let's go back.
Well, the beginning of Catholic in Recovery started as a website, catholicinrecovery.com. I got sober 4 or 5 years later, found that the church, well, not too shortly thereafter, the church and 12-step recovery both saved my life, running in parallel streams. Not a lot of crossover, however, and I felt that the church could learn a lot from what was happening in the rooms of 12-step recovery, and that there were plenty of people in 12-step recovery meetings who were longing for a deeper relationship with their higher power and wanting some more definition or depth to that. And so
this wasn't being done anywhere.
No, there's a Christian organization, a non-Catholic Christian, Celebrate Recovery, which has like 30,000 groups, maybe more, probably more than that, around the world.
Wow.
And impacts hundreds of thousands, if not millions of people. And they have gotten this right. I think it's been embraced. It's been around for a lot longer, 35 or 40 years now. But they are the evangelical arm of a lot of non-Catholic Christian churches. And so when gathering, and I started, then the book was, some of my writing was found by a representative of Ave Maria Press, a Catholic publisher out of Notre Dame. She invited me to write, to put a proposal for a book together that was accepted. About a year and a half later, after writing the manuscript, that book was published. However, as I was writing the manuscript, it was clear that there was something happening. There was a need that was being tapped, and
how was that? How did you, when you say there was a need is that an intellectual thing? You're like, hey, I'm actually doing something here that's a gap within where the church could like offer incredible value.
Yeah, I would say that for myself, like I felt that I could be more free. I could be freely share of myself more so in 12-step recovery settings than I could in Catholic church settings. And that I was that there was some kind of like really getting at to the core of like what's really going on as a question that someone in recovery would ask me, and I would have no problem just being open and honest about it. And that's a question that was not really asked all that often, or if it would be within the church, I would not feel all that comfortable saying like what's really going on. And so
that's a really deep thing you just shared right there. I think it's worth just like hanging out with. Like your hope, if I'm like putting words in your mouth here, like would be that the Catholic Church would have more of a culture that looks like a 12-step program of vulnerability, of leading with powerlessness, of just like relying on our Lord. Yeah. And the richness that comes out of a conversation like that is just
absolutely. And it empowers the people that, part of the 12 steps is giving back what we freely received. But if discipleship looked like that, and we use some of the same terminology. When sponsor is someone in recovery who takes us through the 12 steps and places our hand in the hand of God. We use the term sponsor, and as far as a confirmation sponsor and things like that, godparents kind of are like a sponsor, if you will. But if we were to treat our Catholic sponsors for confirmation or other sacramental preparation as we did sponsors in recovery, which is like knowing me better than I might even know myself, and just bearing it and being honest with them and sharing very vulnerably with that person. And, in other conversations, feeling the safety to share what's really going on, like that, which requires some humility and some, sharing my failures and such. Like, I think that those conversations, if we had that spirit in the church, I think everyone would be Catholic.
I just got the chills a little bit. That because I'm thinking about how I've approached confirmation. The bar hasn't been set that high for what your sponsor is, for how that vulnerability and intimacy should look like in that sense. Yeah. Okay.
These things don't come naturally, though. I mean, like I said, the 12 steps is a great spiritual blueprint for conversion that anyone can benefit from. But it does require a level of honesty that most, unless their back is against the wall, like life or death, that we're not willing to do. To get into a relationship with a sponsor or someone who's going to help save my life, but also requires me sharing what's really going on with that person, that requires, we don't naturally just seek that unless there is some suffering behind it, to be honest. And so there is that benefit of like desperation. If we could enhance, and that's really, part of, we never really retire or graduate from recovery, but we're always working it. Just like we don't graduate from the spiritual life, but we're always committing it. It might mature and take on different shape, and different seasons it might look different from others, but always receiving from others, always giving back to others. In this line of, someone's walking a pathway to Christ before me, and I think the better example or metaphor is like digging into a well. You've fallen into a well, reach up and grab the hand that's above you that's being pulled up by this chain, and then once you get to a certain place, reach your hand down and pull someone up with you.
Yes.
That's really how that's kind of the spirit of what that looks like.
Yes. No, it's beautiful. Okay, so you're in this early phase, and you see there's unique value being added in this. Like, hey, we got so much to offer in the 12 steps over here. If this even hit the parish level to any degree, it would transform things. And we have the sacraments over here, which are so transformative. Can we just combine these things?
Yes, a bit of that. But how to do that was the question. And so the options as I was writing the book. Was thinking like, what am I going to do? Am I going to be a speaker? Is this something that's a full-time position for me? I was working, serving tables at the time, and then left that to enter into this position as executive director full-time, and was also getting my master's degree to become a therapist. And but I wasn't sure, even as I was getting that degree, what Catholic in Recovery was going to look like, but I figured it would inform all of this work. And so, what do I do? Am I going to be a writer and a speaker and go around and, I've seen examples of that, but that didn't seem genuine or authentic, and what's left behind. And no shade on any Catholic speakers, but I just think that there's like, if you're providing a message of hope, but if there's not something that can sustain that hope, then what's the point? Now there could be, referring people, and Catholic in Recovery doesn't claim to be a substitute for AA or NA, Narcotics Anonymous, or Sexaholics Anonymous, or Overeaters Anonymous, or I could go on and on. There are all sorts of 12-step groups, but rather be a supplement to or a bridge between those secular 12-step recovery groups in the church and vice versa. A lot of people have had some experience with one or more of those groups, but maybe have felt it lacking, or which was probably actually more of a reflection of their internal state, looking for some rationalization or some form of denial that says this isn't for me.
That's interesting. So it goes both ways. People that might be encouraged into going through the 12 steps through Catholic in Recovery.
Yeah.
And also those coming out of that are looking for a more deepening of the faith.
I would say that the misunderstandings that people have about the church and what the church is or isn't is very similar to the misunderstandings that people have of 12-step recovery, particularly those who may have been referred to a group by their pastor or someone, and then they get to it and they read the steps on the wall, they see God, and they might also hear of someone who is describing themselves as a recovering Catholic, as if that's a condition that needs to be recovered from, which is really implying some either big T or small t trauma that they've experienced in their past. But yeah, so I felt that like really it's community building. That was the first kind of, what are we going to be doing? Yeah. Are we providing content? Are we like, what is the essence of this mission? And felt that what was necessary was for community to be built within the church.
Yes.
So that was the first major inflection point.
Okay. And are you thinking about monetization at that point? Or are you just like, hey, this is clearly a nonprofit. There's been a gap of community. Because I'm thinking like one of the first major decisions that I think Catholic entrepreneurs miss and don't think deeply enough is just, what's your business model? Like, what's your model? And there's way more business models now than there was 50 years ago. So like, there's a lot of options out there, even within the ways you could raise money as a nonprofit. There's a lot of different ways. So yeah, help me. Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's get to your business model.
And even how much what's our relationship with the church like was another major question there as well. And so, as starting out found, and I didn't start any of this because I saw the opportunity. I started this because I felt as a kind of a returning Catholic that this would be beneficial for me, and I'm certain it would be beneficial for other people. And it would also be beneficial for the church that I was falling in love with to foster a spirit of healing within the church. Yes. And so, figuring out what does the business model look like. I actually just assumed that churches would pay for it. And so I thought, it was in the first meeting, the church will compensate us, and we're providing a service as an extension of the church. And that was okay with some churches, but I came to learn very soon that some churches it wasn't an option for them. Most were taking a chance by even bringing on or starting a Catholic recovery group in their parish. A lot of them there was some even as a reflection of the culture, I think, within some churches. I heard a pastor or two say something along the lines of, why would I want a bunch of alcoholics and addicts showing up at my church on a regular basis? It's like, well, Father, Mr. Pastor, you already do. They're just being untreated. But that kind of speaking to this culture of like, we've got to present well. And as long as we're presenting well in the church, which means not inviting in like healing opportunities. Yeah, that's just speaking to, I think, some of the cultural challenges or barriers within the church to institute healing. But again, we didn't have any history as Catholic in Recovery. And so people were taking a chance and starting a Catholic in Recovery group at their parish. We started here, their first group at St. Joseph Cathedral downtown. By God's grace, the DRE of that parish, the Director of Religious Education, was a recovering alcoholic who could kind of see the vision and help get some things started. And so momentum built very slowly, but credibility was added to slowly as we started other groups in other parishes, first here in San Diego and then around the country, and then adding on other partners. When the book was published, that certainly added some credibility, that provided media opportunities. I began regular guest appearances on Catholic Answers and other TV and radio programs. And then pandemic hit in 2020. I started my Sent group and fellowship like right as the pandemic was hitting.
Yeah.
Was that a helpful
group for you in that time?
That was, I would say that was so helpful at the time, because things were still unclear of what this was all going to look like. I didn't have a ton of like business background. I knew enough, but I really needed to be with others. I felt very lonely at the time. I remember when the invitation, shout out David Murphy, the invitation to speak to John about joining Sent came about. I was a little pessimistic, but gave it a try. And I felt like all the things that, the things that I was thinking about a lot were, I could actually have conversations about with people, because my friends and people that I was, would otherwise talk to about this stuff were just didn't have the same experiences. And so, and I found, just by the way, that a good Sent group or any kind of like entrepreneurial group that's bringing people together, like recovery, if we're just going to be showcasing all the things that we're doing well, that's not all that fruitful or effective. But if people are actually getting honest with the challenges, the mistakes that they've made, what they've learned from those mistakes, speak in a very humble and honest way, like that's where the good stuff comes, and not too different from what, the benefit that I found in recovery.
Yes, I would hope that for our fellowship, like the vision you're painting now of what the culture of realness would look like in a Catholic in recovery group, I would hope that is, and I think that is the case in our fellowships. Mm-hmm. But it is interesting. I think you are probably more acutely aware of your interior world than a lot of people. You've done a lot of inner work. You've gone through this process, and so when some people hear the word like loneliness or isolation, they might just like swat it away, like, oh, I got to be better than that, I got to be stronger than that, or like, I've got enough friends, I've got Bill back from college, like, and it's like there's I don't know, I think about just how important it is through Scripture that Christ's command to go out 2 by 2, mm-hmm. to operate as a group of apostles, like to stay together in the upper room, to like this idea of community is just like so essential. Mm-hmm. And I feel like people don't even realize they need it. Do you find that?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, there's stages. Community helped save my life. I mean, my recovery community, church community, where we met at St. Bridget, the young adult community there. It's where I met my wife. A lot of my best friends are people that I met in that young adult community. Yeah. And so a community has been essential for me. And because I have this tendency, this over-exaggerated pride that I can do it all on my own. And I need to be regularly reminded. If I am in isolation for too long, I become I don't need anybody else. And so I need to stay connected to the body of Christ as much as possible, to be reminded of my need for others. And, we're not all sick on the same day. So sometimes the community needs us. Sometimes we need the community. Yeah. And there is this give and take that we can provide. And so, with Sent, much like any, I think, parish community, church community, recovery community, we come, we receive, we feel connected, and then we feel like we're a part of something greater. And then we're commissioned to go bring other people in along with us. And so, given the opportunity to mentor people formally or informally is a really necessary part of an entrepreneur's growth.
Thank you for calling, because I do think that, especially for an entrepreneur who's maybe made it by being able to do it all at some point, mm-hmm. and there's such a tendency to, nobody's coming to save me, I need to be a solo hero, I'll do it if no one else will, I'll go it's like, and there's some good elements of leadership packed in there, but in isolation, it totally tends towards a pride. And if I think, I'm just looking at myself, like if I wasn't being real in community with people, I would go off the rails. Mm-hmm. I would go off the rails. I would be spending so much time in purgatory.
Absolutely. And I think we need people who are in community, who are doing the same thing that we are. And then we also need communities of people who are not doing the same thing as we are. So like one thing that I found very helpful about recovery communities is they are anonymous. And so the people who I'm connecting with in recovery meetings aren't they're not integrated into my family life or my work life or my church life, but they are really just kind of like this group of people who are there to support me and give me purpose as I support others and encourage me. But they're not like it's willing the good of the other as other. They don't get any tangible benefit from my wellness.
Yes.
And even I think it's important to have people who are around you who have no tangible benefit in the benefit that they're providing you. So some friends who are, not entrepreneurs, who my business success is not going to impress, it's really important that I have friends like that because I have this tendency to want to enter into a relationship by proving myself or by achieving my way into relationship, if you will. If you don't need to know me, you just need to know the things that I've created, or know the things that I've achieved, and that's how you'll approve of me and accept me. That's really unhealthy, and there's maybe some good to that can be gleaned, but I need some people who just like aren't impressed by the things that I might be doing or accomplishing me, and can just maybe even call me out when I'm trying to present myself as that.
That's what you are for me. You're like, I don't care what I don't care what sense do. Like, how are you, man? How's your marriage? I love it. Okay, I totally have experienced that as well with all the men's groups that I've been a part of, and I'd love to hang out with community for a minute, because from a business standpoint, you've done something incredible with Catholic in Recovery, having paid and volunteer people leading communities every single week, dozens and dozens and dozens around the country. And there's an art to that leadership. I think you might do it like second nature because I've watched you lead, and you lead with vulnerability, you lead community well, but then you've made that extend beyond you. So you've created a culture that's lived far beyond you. Like, you're not on every one of the calls. You're not on.
No, not even close. I can't be.
You can't be. So maybe just for those who are in leadership roles, how do you, let's maybe take the volunteer angle.
Yeah.
A couple different angles here.
Yeah.
But how do you lead volunteers well? And what's the line between you're like, hey, this is too much to ask, or how do you think about that?
Well, yeah, we have hundreds of volunteers. Everyone who facilitates, or not lead is not the right word, but everyone who has started a Catholic in Recovery group, whether it's an in-person meeting or a virtual meeting, is a volunteer. And there's someone who has reached out to us. So I think that having a space where people are reaching out to you and initiating they're actually volunteering instead of being voluntold, just as necessary to have buy-in. Now it's hard though too, for a long time, it was just me and all volunteers as our staff. And then, as we've grown, we've added employees and contractors. And, there is, when someone is being paid to do something, they're accountable to something, a volunteer, there's no necessary tangible accountability there. So you've got to build a culture.
Yes. Just to hang out there for a second. So what are these volunteers that are saying, hey, I'd like to volunteer because I've experienced it before? Or what are you doing on that front end to communicate the mission in a way that's compelling enough where people are like, yeah, I'll volunteer for that?
Yeah, I think it's touching people's longing to integrate their faith in their recovery. And so I think a lot of people have this common experience that I'm not sure what it is exactly that we communicate that allows just this freedom, but it's this freedom for those who are already in recovery, feeling like when I'm in the church, I need to take my recovery hat off and I need to present a certain way. And when I'm in my recovery meetings, I need to take my Catholic hat off and not present too Catholic, speak in general terms. And there's benefit to that because not everyone who's approaching recovery is Catholic or Christian. And so there is some benefit on a human level to vague interpretations of God that can be taken a little bit too vaguely. But so people who are wanted to do both, they feel like maybe my experience with my own recovery can benefit others in my parish, and I want to be a part of that. And so they reach out. Sometimes people will reach out because they're looking like they want to be helped by way of helping other people, which there is some truth to that. Recovery happens because we step out of ourselves, we concern ourselves with other people's needs, but not first without tending to our own needs. So sometimes people will reach out wanting to lead a group but don't have their own recovery experience. That's not a go, but that can be an invitation into participation in their own recovery first. Let's get 6 months or a year of recovery under your belt, and then we can pick up this conversation.
Yes.
But what I've learned too early on is I used to meet before the pandemic even with those who were interested in starting new Catholic in Recovery meetings, bringing them together. We used GoToMeeting and had a meeting on Mondays. And I was thinking, like, I need people to experience a Catholic in Recovery meeting if they're going to go start Catholic in Recovery meetings. How do I do that? Or we could do that in a virtual setting. And so we just would hold a weekly Catholic in Recovery meeting for those people who were in the process of starting new groups and those who had already started a group. And that allowed them to learn from each other rather than them learning just from me. And so they were hearing best practices and common challenges and really building each other up. And so I think that when volunteers are hearing or learning from volunteers, not just seeing me as the source of authority, but I think that has been really beneficial for us.
Yes. Okay. Just a couple things to pull out there because I am consistent weekly volunteer basically modeling the sort of behavior that you would want to see in the things that they're leading and making space for best practice sharing.
Yep.
Kind of in that twofold.
Yeah. And not hiding away from also the common challenges.
Yes.
Like you're taking a risk, you're giving your time, and it may not be easy. And you might actually be showing up at the parish on a weekly basis for a few weeks and no one else is going to show up. Now, we also encourage people to have a few people that they can start the group with so that they're not solely responsible for being there and things like that, to start with a little bit of some movement bodies.
Yeah.
But the reality is that if you're starting something, you might turn the lights on, set things up, and there's a chance that no one's going to show up.
Yes. Yes. That's a very, honestly, just even you describing that, I've also had events like that where you really want someone to come to your party, your thing.
Yeah.
Pick your gathering, and if less people show up than you thought, it can be a bummer. Yeah. And having a place to just be honest about that and be like, yeah, this is a real challenge. Like anyone who's hosted events before, it's been anxiety. Will people come? Yeah.
I remember when we started our first men's lust addiction recovery meeting at St. Bridget in Pacific Beach, and I was, because it doesn't take you don't need my experience to know that lust addiction and pornography addiction are big problems and problems that a lot of people are dealing with. And so I had this vision that, it's the second group that we started, but we were getting the word out and priests and deacons are speaking about it, and we're putting things in the bulletin, and there's probably going to be 50 guys who show up to this thing. And there were like 4 at the first night. Yeah. And, so it's just recognizing too that it's not just for people who need it, but it's for people who want it and desperately want it. Because to muster the courage to get honest with yourself and say, I've got a problem, I need to do something about this, and I'm going to put myself in front of other people and admit that I've got this problem, that takes, there's a lot of human factors that are working against that.
Yes. No, I totally can see that. And you said a phrase that I just want to hone in on because I think it's so true for anyone leading a business that would experience. You said people are drawn to Catholic in Recovery because they feel like they got to take their Catholic hat off in the recovery meeting, and they've got to take their recovery hat off in a Catholic setting. Mm-hmm. That's a very clear way to describe a pain point around something that people really care about. Mm-hmm. It seems to me that's kind of the trick with great communication in a lot of different ventures of a variety of types, is like find the thing that people really care about. Like someone's already committed to they really care about being sober and on a path that will lead them to flourishing. Mm-hmm. And you've described a pain point within that's super simple and clear. I can't say I'm like an expert at it, but when I've seen great communication with groups that give volunteers the hairs in the back of their neck stand up and they're like, yeah, I want to be a part of that. Mm-hmm. That seems to be like a common denominator.
Yeah, I think we vet people who volunteer for us and make sure that they get it. but part of it requires some education. And yeah, it's bringing people in the community. Scent is not too different from that. Whereas it might be we need to take our entrepreneurial hat off before we enter into church settings and spaces, and we need to take our church hat off before we enter into entrepreneurial or business discussions. And it's just to live that undivided life, and similar with as we. There's some benefit in some ways to like putting some things on our shelf and, like showing up totally authentically. Doesn't mean just like bringing to you everything that's on your mind and just dumping that. Like there is necessary. We wouldn't be able to live our lives, have any kind of relationship or conversation, but if we weren't otherwise. But yeah, there is some, living authentically, not feeling like I need to be one person in one setting and another person in another setting. Although it is, I think, prudent to ask yourself, like, how do I need to show up right now? If I'm dealing with some bad news but have an important meeting, it's not inauthentic to, like, put a smile on your face and have eye contact with that person and also hold this challenging thing that you're dealing with.
Yes, I'd love to. Okay, so let's maybe hang out there, because I think someone might on the surface see Catholic in Recovery. It's a Catholic organization. Like, of course, by default, it's got a Catholic ethos or a Catholic DNA to it. Where have you been challenged to actually integrate our Catholic faith, our worldview, into the business?
Yeah, I would say, we pray before meetings. The things that might be like some low-hanging fruit things, I think that we do fairly well. I think giving people an opportunity to, like, I don't know, make mistakes, but that there's a challenge that, it's both for me, the question is like, how do we integrate one's faith into the work that we're doing, but also how do we integrate recovery and live by recovery principles ourselves as a team? And that means some sharing honestly as we would, but also recognizing that there is still a line between, like roles. I'm people's supervisors, and needs to be so sometimes it's hard to sometimes navigate. I've got employees who share very openly. They feel very comfortable sharing things with me. And sometimes I think, well, is this really a conversation that you should be having with your boss right now? Usually I think the conversation is, or the answer to that question is like, maybe this wouldn't be the norm in most places, but we do have a special, kind of relationship here where you can bring your challenges to me. I'll understand. I'll, show empathy and compassion and concern. And I can't be the fullness of, like, you've got to find some solutions to this elsewhere.
Yes.
Yeah.
If I could, just to riff on that for a sec, because I think that is the heart. I mean, as I've grown in business and around a lot of other leaders, business problems are typically people problems. At some level, that's basically where the root of all the challenges come from, is the person, leadership, whatever. And as Catholics, we can't just pretend like, oh, it's not personal, it's just business. We see this whole person. We care about the dignity of the human person, which means we're not transactional in how we go about. And yet there's this very real, we're here to get a job done. We exist in this organization, and we get paid, and we're here to get a job done. So do you communicate that with your team? Is there anything outspoken? Because I gotta say, embarrassingly, like I've said, we could bring your whole self to work. We want to ask about people outside of work as we enter one-on-one meetings and make space for that. So those have been some principles in my companies, but it's not like we have this full framework built out of how to do that really well. And so, anyways, how do you draw the line?
Yeah, that's a tricky line to draw, because part of like our mission is really rooted on. It's not about me, and that's been a big transition too. Is like, as the founder, a lot of founders, there's this transition between it being all about the founder's story, especially if it's rooted in some kind of story. And so my story, my kind of struggle and my redemption has been chronicled, and my teammates know of it. And so, and we want to encourage openness and honesty. Sometimes giving feedback. There's I think a natural kind of challenge or conflict between design and development. We've recently developed an app and doing some, design related things. And so even navigating those challenging conversations can be a little bit tricky, and just like being honest and sharing some expressions. I feel like graphic designers are some of the hardest people to give feedback to, because they put so much effort and so much of themselves into this work, and then to give like critical feedback is challenging.
And videographers.
Yes.
Love them to death.
Yes.
Nick, you're awesome.
So I think the biggest challenge, I bet a lot of people can relate to this, but this is more on my mind because we serve people with all sorts of their own addictions, loved ones' addictions. Codependency is a challenge that a lot of people face. That comes with some baggage, that word does, but essentially needing others to be well in order to be well yourself, and that we get entangled in things, and people pleasing and seeking approval, which doesn't in itself is not a bad thing, but the overwhelming desire for it can be really unhealthy.
I actually never heard that defined as clearly as you just did. Needing others to be well in order to be well yourself.
That's, I think, the simplest understanding of how I've come to understand codependency, or communicate it in a way that is not bringing all sorts of negative connotation to it.
Yes.
But people who are codependent, though, are also really good workers and employees and volunteers. And they're taken advantage of in the church as volunteers, and they're the people who will always be there to attend the events, and who are always going to volunteer their time. And as workers, they're the people who are going to work overtime without or like do the work from home and things like that. And so,
how do you coach them as a leader? How are you coaching those people?
Because I've been sometimes I need them I need their people pleasing to come out in order for them to get the job done. Like, I need you to be satisfied. I need you to seek my satisfaction with you by you doing a good job. I've got to be very careful with that. And
you recognize, but what you're saying here is you've because you got the therapy lens here, is also you got a deep knowledge base. You're able to recognize codependent tendencies and know that person might neglect self-care.
Yes, and that's something that I've got to be careful of. Now, where do you put the responsibility? On the person to practice self-care, or on me to not fuel their codependency? There's a very fine line there that I don't have a specific rubric by how I evaluate that on a regular basis, but I've got to be very mindful of that. And I think that brings into how am I bringing my Catholic faith into the work in a rather practical way of I shouldn't be taking advantage of people's seeking my approval by what they do with that is somewhat up to them. Mm-hmm. I've got to be careful that my own codependency isn't trying to micromanage their codependency. So there's layers of that too.
Well, I think it's interesting. I think about leadership, and one thing I think I don't know if some people would scoff. I've heard some people scoff at this, but I think as Catholics we have an opportunity, at least maybe responsibility, to form the people that we lead. Yeah. In a beautiful way. And so some people might say, oh, what is a Catholic business owner, how does that actually impact the culture? It's well, the way you lead absolutely impacts the lives of the people you lead. Mm-hmm. And we can do that in forming a beautiful worldview, a beautiful place that's worked, products and services that are good. And so part of that is something really concrete. I had a teammate who knew that they had codependent tendencies, and who set a personal goal that was on the business metrics. I'm going to spend this much time on this thing to make sure I'm my best self and my healthiest self. And that's an awesome function that a business can provide, is accountability for something that helps somebody's life flourish. Yeah. It's if you're, I really think that as an organization, you've got the opportunity to help hold accountability, because you pay the person's paycheck, because that they're accountable to the people, and you can help them flourish more. Mm-hmm. If you don't hold this KPI doesn't have a dollar amount attached to it, so it can't make it on a business goal. It's throw that out the window. Yeah. I think that the way that we are leading, setting an example for our team, and formation is so necessary, and that we need to be receiving formation as well through external and internal means. Yeah. That we are continually
showing our willingness to be formed, our, being soft clay while we're with our peers or people who are reporting to us.
Yes, 100%. I really wanted to get into your personal rule of life and the habits you have. I don't think we have time.
Okay.
But what we always do to end these is a rapid fire. Okay. So I'd love your I'm gonna throw out some phrases. These are common business phrases that you might hear, and you either agree, disagree, or just pass.
Okay.
Just throw it out the window. These will be fast, and then we'll close. Okay. If you're not growing, you're dying. You're
either getting sober or you're getting drunk. Yeah, I think that recovery is a process and relapse is a process.
Okay.
I'll agree.
Oh, you agree? Okay. No one's gonna care like the owner.
I would say that no one's got the risk as much risk as the owner, but I think that people can care just as much in my experience. If you're truly tapping into what people are passionate about and care about, sometimes on a daily basis, there are people who care about Catholic and recovery more than I do. That's a gift. That's a good thing.
Praise God. I need to hear that. That's awesome. Ideas are cheap. Execution is everything.
I think that the road to hell is paved with good intentions. So yeah, don't tell. I would say I think there's some truth to that. Yeah, we can have this. Yeah, ideals are good too. Yeah, ideas, good, maybe cheap, but let's see it in action.
Yeah. Two more here. Culture eats strategy for breakfast.
Culture eats strategy for breakfast. I will probably agree with that. I think that culture sets the foundation for strategy.
Yeah. Amen. People are our greatest asset.
Agreed.
Praise God.
Yeah, I think life is a precious gift, and we are all among a body, and we all have value.
Yes. Scott, I'm grateful that our friendship has brought many years to a podcast like this and getting to spend some time together. Hopefully we'll do it again.
Thank you. Appreciate the invitation.
Anytime. Thank you. Thanks for joining us today. I hope that added value for you. To help us continue to reach more people, if you could like and subscribe, that'll help the algorithms reach more folks and help more people get value from the content. If you'd like to learn more about Scott and the work that they're doing at Catholic in Recovery, CatholicInRecovery.com is their website. They got all the information there.